What are the worst adapted Spider-Man characters in any Spider-Man movie? There are quite a few Spider-Man characters that are just so wildly different from their comic book adaptation. You would have to do a double, if not triple, maybe even a quadruple take to recognize these characters. Today, I've compiled a list of the 10 worst adapted characters from the comics. I mean, these characters are quite literally damn near unrecognizable from their comic book counterpart selves. It's brutal when you're actually looking at it. Now, I'm not trying to waste time. I know you guys love it when I jump right into the video, so let me just ask you guys. What do you think is the worst adapted Spider-Man character in a movie? Movies specifically, okay? So no games, no TV shows, no live-action TV shows, just the movies. But any movie is on the table, okay? Spider-Man 1, 2, 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 1, 2, MCU Homecoming, Far From Home, No Way Home, and the Spider-Verse films, okay? And not only are the Spider-Verse movies being considered for this list, we're also doing every single Sony movie as well, because they're technically Spider-Man movies too, right? Sorta. So without further ado, I'm going to start at the top of my list, number 10. The 10th worst adapted Spider-Man character in a Spider-Man film is Spider-Man 2099 and Across the Spider-Verse.
I'm sorry, who exactly are you supposed to be?
It's classified.
Now, people, this movie did some very much unrepairable damage to the fandom. People who don't know who Spider-Man 2099 is from the comic books, Miguel Ojeda, people who do not know his comic book counterpart, now just seem to believe that this character is an antagonist. They think he is aggressive, they think he's violent, and they think he's willing to kill a child. Yeah, literally murder a child. These people are way off base because this is nothing like Miguel in the comics, and that is why Miguel is going to be number 10th on our list. When you look at the comic books and you look at how Miguel is done in the comics, these two, the movie version and himself, are nothing alike. Clearly, they needed an antagonist for the movie, but Miguel is very much a hero. Miguel is a good guy. Miguel is a super good guy. He's a hero. He's like the hero of Spider-Man 2099. Yes, there's other facets of the universe, but when it all came down to it and the universe was ending, he was essentially the main character of the universe, trying to save everybody constantly. And yes, this character can be a bit more aggressive than maybe the Peter Parker you guys are used to seeing, but overall, he's not like superbly more aggressive than Peter Parker in the comics either, you know? Overall, this character is just, it's just so wildly different when you look at the two. He's not like running around threatening Miles' life. No, he's trying to save the people of his universe and through their plights. And I think that's another issue you see within this movie. You don't even really get to see Nueva York 2099. That doesn't really even exist in the movie. It's there, but you just spend most of your time in the Spider Society, which isn't actually there in the comics, and you're just following the storyline from this one building and then the highway chase scene, essentially. When in actuality, he's the protector of this city. He helps take care of it. He swoops in when people need him. He's like on the race cars when they need him. You know, he's fighting his version of Venom. Everything about this character that's actually from the comic books was just like stripped from him for this movie. All of his villains aren't there. All of his actual motivations aren't there. They gave him a brand new backstory. He doesn't actually come from another universe where his child died, so he slipped into another universe and tried to live out his days there where he found a dead version of himself. No, that doesn't happen. He just is a resident of Marvel Universe of 2099. So all of this character just feels so off basis to me. I really feel like it was a disservice choosing Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, to be the antagonist for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I personally would have went for somebody like Superior Spider-Man. You don't necessarily need Spider-Man 2099 for this role. You just don't. He's the overarching bad guy, and he's never been an overarching bad guy in any comic book I've read, and I've read quite a few. Superior Spider-Man, however, he is a more aggressive Spider-Man who does try and do things for the betterment of the people. He's an ends justifies the means kind of person, so he would be willing to kill Miles if it meant saving the multiverse in his eyes. You know, keeping the canon intact in his eyes. So I think that they should have totally just went with Superior Spider-Man and made their own story for him. Like, oh, this is a Doc Ock who got into Peter Parker's body and he leads the Spider Society with an iron fist. Something like that. Because to me, they're just really changing how people perceive this character, and it's truly sad. It's so sad. Number 9 on this list, the next character we're going to talk about on this list, it's Mary Jane from the Raimi universe. Now, I don't have her super high up like I know some of you people who are watching this video might have. And I know a lot of people watching this video are also going to be mad I even have her here at all. Because a lot of her story beats are very similar to her from the comics. Now, she's not exactly living like next door neighbor to Peter, but she does live fairly close, you know? She's like in Anna's home. Aunt May and Anna are good friends. They don't live too far from each other. They had her have the issues with her family. You know, the familial issues are still there in this movie, very much so.
Me, you're trash. You're always gonna be trash, just like her.
I have to go to school.
Stop.
She's also a model to an extent, you know, because like she's like advertising herself on these posters and whatnot. So to an extent, she does have a lot of the story beats that make her the Mary Jane from the comics that I enjoy. But there is a glaring issue that she has that I can't get behind. And there's I'm going to just say it, and then I'm going to have to fight off the goobers who are going to detract from it. But this is the validity of it. Mary Jane is not a cheater. She's just not. And in these movies, every single movie she's in, she actually cheats. And it's just so dastardly because she's not somebody who would destroy her partner like that. Like, maybe she's one to be flirtatious. I won't ignore that. That's very valid. But she's not like a wholehearted cutthroat cheater like she's portrayed to be in these movies. She, like, again, she cheats in every single one of these movies. And I'm not just trying to harp on Mary Jane because Peter and Harry are also terrible people in these movies when you look at their interpersonal connections with one another, which even are honestly kind of akin to the comic books, but they just go too far. Like, they go way too far with the cheating, man. And I guess why I would say Mary Jane is just so far removed from her comics is just because this version of the character in society has just damn near warped the viewing and the perception of her character. Like, if it wasn't for these films, people wouldn't be seeing Mary Jane as this serial cheater that they perceive her to be. Now, later comic book runs have come out since then, like Zeb Wells' run, and they further perpetuated Mary Jane not being the most faithful, but this even still is not actually entirely accurate. People will say she cheated on Peter Parker in Zeb Wells' Spider-Man run, but that's just not true. She was stranded in another universe for God knows how long because time works differently there. Whereas with Peter Parker, I think it was like 3 to 4 days he went back to Earth before he went back to save her. For Mary Jane, it was like months to years. And I think it's very, very, very unfair for you guys to say that Mary Jane is gonna be like, I don't know, are we really acting like she's supposed to just know Spider-Man is alive and come get her? Like, I like that thought and I like that sentimentality, but it's just not real for an actual character you want written in a story. If we want Mary Jane to be perceived as a real character, if years go by without her love interest being around or her, you know, her love, it's okay for her to move on. And that she didn't even really move on. There's flashbacks of her like being like, "Where are you, Peter?" Like she was waiting for the guy, but just the way the time worked differently, it didn't really work out. And all of this is said to say she definitely didn't cheat on the guy. These are extenuating circumstances that are just far out of her control. You know who did cheat? Peter Parker. But nobody's going to harp on Peter Parker for being a cheater. It's just Mary Jane. It's just misogyny. And as sad as it is, this Mary Jane from the Raimi universe really perpetuated the notion about Mary Jane, and it's just not true. If you read any of her comics, especially before this came out, she was not like this. She was not a serial cheater. But overall, this is probably one of the few characters on this list I will say that, like, I think she gets a bad rep. Outside of that, I do think she's a very solid adaptation. Just nukes her adaptation entirely, in my opinion. Number 8. The next one we have going on here is actually going to be Kraven from the Kraven movie.
Pretty low on the pecking order, Andre. Oh, found you.
This is just wild to me. It's wild. Sony's going off the tracks. They don't have the Amazing Spider-Man anymore. They decide, fire Andrew Garfield. We're moving on. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. He's the best damn Spider-Man that ever existed. But whatever. We keep moving on. They make a Venom movie. And it's like, okay. Venom, that guy was one of the most selling, best-selling comic book characters in the 90s. I can totally understand why you'd make a Venom movie. And then they made a Morbius movie. And that movie was utter trash, in my opinion. It was just so bad. They would then make another movie, Madam Web, and then they would then make Kraven. And all three of these movies, in my opinion, had no right to be made. None of these characters are really, like, worth making a solo film about, showing them as off as good people. I mean, they have some things in their storyline, like Morbius does become an anti-hero for a bit, and I'm actually leaving him off this list entirely. You can make an argument for him to be here, but I do think there's some other worse ones the Sony universe did. In this movie, I just was floored by the fact that Sony gave him a movie at all. And not only did they give him a movie, but they also made him a good guy in the movie. Kraven, to my knowledge, is never a good guy. Sure, he can be an ambivalent person. He could be somebody who's hunting a bad guy, but he's not inherently a good guy. He's not going after gangsters to make the streets better. He's not going after poachers to protect animals' life. If anything, Kraven has worked with gangsters, and Kraven has been a poacher in the comic books as well. So the notion that they decided to make a whole-ass Kraven movie about how Kraven is a good guy and this whole new storyline thing with... This doesn't work. It's not true. None of it's true. None of it is like the comics. The only thing that's even close to resemblance of the comics is the very last scene. He wears like a costume that's akin to the comics, but even still, it's not even close to a comic book accurate costume for him. Like the whole thing with his daddy issues, to my knowledge, never happens. I can't remember a single comic book where that has ever happened, where Kraven has to hunt down his father and take the mantle of the hunter. After he just spent the entire movie trying to fight gangsters and everything, he just decides, oh yeah, I'll just be one of them. Like, not only was this movie terrible, but this was also a terrible adaptation of the character. Next up at number 7, we have Shocker from the MCU.
Gave you a choice. You chose wrong.
Oh, what the hell?
What's with the crappy costume?
This character is nothing like the Shocker from the comics. If you've read Shocker from the comics, or at least his original comic book appearances, he's actually a pretty smart dude. Not only is he a smart dude, but he actually creates the Shocker gauntlets himself, as well as the suit that can withstand the gauntlets without ripping them apart with him using the gauntlets, The gauntlets are very powerful, so most costume clothing could be ripped apart. So he designed both of these things. He even beat Spider-Man in their first interaction. This is comic book Shocker. The Shocker from the MCU, it's nothing like this. They had the same name, and he does very well against Spider-Man in his, first interaction in his quote-unquote costume, but he's not wearing a costume. He's kind of just a random guy. He didn't make this himself. He's not an inventor or a genius. They have an inventor genius in part of their gang, and he is not him. They actually give the mantle of the Shocker from somebody else to him, so I guess this other guy is supposed to be Montana, which is pretty interesting that they would do a loose retelling of multiple Shockers in a single storyline without any of them actually looking like Shocker. He looks nothing like the character. It doesn't feel like the character. I wish they would either, focus on him being down on his luck or focus on him being an inventor smart, because they just decided to have him be like a nothing burger. It's truly tragic. Shocker honestly deserved better. I really think they could have had a good appearance with him, and he still has a chance to have one. Hopefully the MCU uses him again in the future and actually gives him a freaking costume. All right, next up on the list is number 6. And in number 6, we have Carnage from Venom, Let There Be Carnage.
Let there be carnage.
This Carnage adaptation feels like they decided to do everything they could do to detach themselves from the comic book, at least to me. Because this Carnage, for some reason, he's not a perfect symbiosis. That's exactly what he is. Venom is we. Carnage is I. Him and Cletus, the red symbiote and Cletus, just work hand in hand. They have a perfect symbiotic bond together. So they just work well together. They're both malicious, mangy monsters. They're both evil. So that's why they just have such a perfect bond with one another. They both just get each other at their core level. At a blood cell level, they understand each other. This movie actually decided to go the complete opposite route. They're like, oh, they're not a perfect symbiosis. We can beat them. And it's like,
They're not symbiotic. Get away from me!
Shut up.
what? That's Carnage's whole thing, is that Venom is not the perfect symbiosis. He's like a we kind of thing. And Carnage is the perfect symbiosis, Cletus and him. So I don't understand why they went with this. This is the antithesis to what the character stands for. It's not that he's not gelling with Cletus, the red symbiote and Cletus. That they do that without question. On top of that, they do this whole extra thing with the red symbiote and saying the red symbiote's stronger than the usual symbiote, and that's also not true either. That's never happened once in the comics. Venom is never scared to fight Carnage because he's a red symbiote. If anything, Venom knows Carnage outclasses him in strength by 10-fold. Not 10-fold, but at least 3 times. And Venom still will dive into battle against Carnage because Venom just hates Carnage so freaking much. But in this movie, you had Venom cowering like a baby away from Carnage. So their whole dynamic together was just so freaking off. And lastly, probably the most important part for a lot of people, is that Carnage was not allowed to be Carnage. There was not much carnage going on here. He killed a few people, sure, but a lot of it was just a tornado. What is this? What is this? This is not scary or malicious. This doesn't feel like Carnage. This just feels like goofiness. And Carnage, to me, like, I get he could be goofy, but he should also be a murderer, you know? He should be like the Joker-esque, where he's sadistic, killing. I mean, Cletus is still a serial killer, that's fair, but I mean, I don't know. I just didn't like the adaptation. You don't have the perfect symbiosis. You don't have them committing a mass amounts of murder. They try to go the sympathetic route as well with Carnage, and that's also just not a thing. He's really just a deranged person. Like, sure, he may have been treated poorly at a time in his life, but he also was like, killed his grandmother when he was a kid, so it's hard for me to really just believe that he was, you know, tortured and being bad instead of just being bad. But overall, I think this Carnage adaptation is pretty terrible. It's straight up awful. Moving on. At number 5, we have Madam Web, and oh my goodness, this adaptation sucked ass. Holy shit, Madam Web is terrible. Not only as just a movie is it terrible, but as the character trying to adapt the character from the comic books. This character is just not anything like you would expect her to be. If you've read any of the comics, she's like a future sightseer. She's talking in these riddles. She's like making Spider-Man's, not life hell, but she's really asking him for help, and he's not really like usually the one who has the most amount of time to be helping others. But even still, that's a lot of what Madam Web is. This movie, I don't even know what this movie was supposed to do. They had her be like a glorified babysitter, and then she upgrades herself to being a glorified safety patrol. Like, seriously. The climax of this movie had her like showing off her quote-unquote powers, and what was she doing? She was like, stop, don't walk, and then a sign would fall there, and then they'd start walking. And then she'd be like, duck, and then like flares would go off, and they would duck under it. It's like, holy moly, you decided not to even like have her do anything heroic at all. Like, she's just a safety instructor. She's just going around with these kids, and she's just making sure they don't get hurt. Like, she's literally just their mom. It's almost no superpowers at all. My mom, I would say, has more superpowers than this woman. Oh my goodness, dude, this lady was useless. I mean, and there's other stuff I could go into about this movie just not having the accurateness. Ezekiel's not accurate at all, and neither are the 3 girls that she works with. But I'm not going to get too far into that stuff because I think Madam Web truly is the worst part about it. Madam Web in this movie is nothing like the comics. Straight up nothing like the comics. Next up, we have number 4 on our list. And in number 4, this is one you guys may not be too familiar with. He's not the biggest role, but he does have just a complete detachment from who he is supposed to be in the comic books. He's nothing like himself. So let's just jump into it and we'll talk about it. And maybe you guys learn something new. Maybe you guys refute me. Maybe we just go about our day. But I want to talk about it. George Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man.
Down on the ground! Your hands behind your head. Now!
Holy moly, this is a terrible adaptation. This is just simply atrocious. And I'm not even going to focus on the fact that he's killed essentially by the Lizard when he should be killed by Doc Ock. That actually doesn't matter to me. If you're going to die by a different character, it's fine. As long as when you die, you're still propelling and portraying the message you're supposed to be portraying as your character dies in the comic book, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be the same character killing you as long as the death means the same thing. Did that happen? No. Because this character is not even close to the same character in this movie. Let's just say in the comics. George Stacy in the comics is a Spider-Man supporter. He's actually not a Spider-Man hater. He's also not a Spider-Man disbeliever. He believes in Peter. He believes in Spider-Man. He knew Peter was also Spider-Man too. He's very aware of this. So when this movie happens and you have this guy, Dennis Leary as George Stacy, I actually think it's a pretty solid casting. But the direction they had the character going is just straight off of the rails. It's nothing like George Stacy from the comics. He's like making him promise that like he never sees Gwen again because he knows that like this is too dangerous for Gwen at the end of the day. And it's like, I get that makes sense as a father, but like...
So I want you to promise me something, okay? Leave Gwen out of it.
This isn't really what George Stacy was like exclaiming in his death, like when he was dying after like he tried to save that little kid and the rubble was falling on him. He was really trying to push Peter ahead. He was trying to push Spider-Man ahead. He was not just being like, get away from my daughter. Actually, instead of George Stacy telling him to stay away from my daughter, you know what George Stacy said in the comic books? After I'm gone, there will be no one to look after her. Please take care of her. What a complete 180 from the two. These guys are nothing alike. The one in the comics, Spider-Man supporter. He believed in Peter, and he believed that he could help Gwen. The one in the movie, Spider-Man hater, Spider-Man naysayer. Stay away from my dad. This is a terrible adaptation of George Stacy. But we're moving to number 3. Number 3, in my opinion, shouldn't shock too many people. I have Rhino from The Amazing Spider-Man in the 3rd place. This Rhino is ass. He's straight up ass. He's one of the worst adaptations of any Spider-Man character in any adaptation ever. I can't get behind it. I don't know if it's just the giant mecha suit they put him in at the end, or if it's the goddamn terrible Russian accent that we have to hear littered throughout all of his appearances in this film. I can't tell which one bothers me more, but they're both so freaking bad. Oh, I can't get over it. And it's truly tragic, too, because I've actually since learned from making more of these videos that Paul Giamatti was actually a big fan of Rhino as a character, went out and bought the comics, read the comics as well, and he really actually was trying to do his thing when he was doing his character. But you can't ignore it. Like, as much of a fan Paul Giamatti is, and I'm a fan of Paul Giamatti as well. I saw Big Fat Liar when I was a kid. That movie was amazing. I saw Straight Outta Compton as well. He was great in that as well. So, I'm a big Paul Giamatti fan, but we just have to call the spade the spade. That Russian accent was atrocious, man. Holy God, that Russian accent was so bad. And then you go a step further, and it's like his Rhino costume looked horrible. He had, like, the mecha version of it. You know, he's got, like, shooting guns and rockets out of it and everything. The only thing I will say as a solace is, like, he's kind of like he's a bad guy, right? Rhino's supposed to be a bad guy with depth, and then you learn he's not too bad. But, like, he is a gangster. He's a thug. He's not a great person right off rip, especially when you're initially meeting him. And I think Paul Giamatti at least does that well, you know? They didn't go to the depth, you know, to show anything else to the character. But at least we got that. We're at number 2. We're dwindling down the list. Number 2 on this list for me, I got Flash Thompson from the MCU.
He's all right. He's no Spider-Man.
To me, this is horrible. I don't know why they went with this. I guess because the other 2 films already both similarly portrayed Flash Thompson the same way. But I'm not a fan of changing things just for change's sake. You're not making something better because you're making it different. Flash Thompson is supposed to be a Peter Parker bully who's like stuffing him in lockers and trying to fight him and trying to beat him up. You know, he's always on his case. They're always at each other's odds. And it's like a physical, mental battle, but they grow from each other and they learn to be friends. This Flash, I can't see that at all. First off, there's no physical battle. Like in the first film when Flash is like, "You're dead," when he's in class and Peter answers the question correctly and Flash gets it wrong, at no point did I feel any fear for Peter. Peter, regardless for if he had powers or not, I would think we'd just body this kid, bro. I would think he'd body him. I think we'd completely obliterate this guy. So I don't understand like how I'm supposed to be like, "Oh God, look out, Spider-Man, there's a bully over there," because I'm not scared of him. And neither should Spider-Man be. This guy's not intimidating or tough at all. I don't get it. I think they try to do like the cyber bullying, like more of like a rich person's bully in this movie, but that doesn't really work for me. I don't think it's nearly as threatening to Peter or scary to Peter because Peter's still smarter than him. It's not like he's a threat to Peter's intelligence or anything. We see clearly Peter is vastly smarter than him as well. They would trade him for a freaking bag of hot Cheetos if it meant that Peter got to be in the freaking science, the decathlon team. So, I don't know. I will say the saving grace is this character does have the love for Spider-Man. I don't think they do it in a well and meaningful way, but at least it's there, you know? I'm not going to hate on it being there. I'll take it. It's there at the very least. Honestly, I also can't see this guy becoming Agent Venom in the future. I really hope they don't do Agent Venom with him. If anything, I hope Sony just makes their own Agent Venom movie with The Amazing Spider-Man Flash. That's what I would roll with. But that's just me. We're going to move on. I got an honorable mentions list. These characters I'm not going to go too much into, but they're characters I considered putting on this list. So, yeah, I'm just gonna mention them. Morbius. Definitely thought about putting Morbius on here. He's really not too accurate, but he escaped my wrath. Ezekiel, I mentioned him in this video as well. I really thought about putting him on here. I really had a case for him being on here, but I just feel like there's worse ones. Not many people even know Ezekiel overall anyways. Venom from the Raimi franchise. I definitely thought about putting this one there too. I know a lot of people are fans of this Venom. I'm personally not. I don't think he looks the role, and I don't think he's funny or goofy nearly enough. I know some people will combat that, but I actually don't think anything they have brought to my attention to combat it with has been funny or goofy. I think they just maybe have a warped sense of humor, and that's okay. But I would have this character personally as an honorable mention in this list. It didn't make the top 10 worst adaptations, but I definitely would honorably mention him. And the last honorable mention I'm going to have is the Green Goblin from The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Harry Osborn. Harry Osborn himself, whatever. Green Goblin is atrocious. Holy moly. And yes, I know Harry Osborn becomes the Green Goblin, but it doesn't happen like this. All right, we've gone through 9 of the worst adaptations ever, as well as briefly mentioned some honorable mentions. We got to talk about number 1. Number 1, in my opinion, for the worst adapted character in a Spider-Man movie. Rhino from the Kraven movie. Oh, yeah, that's right. Rhino somehow managed to top the list and be 3rd on this list. That's just how bad he is adapted as a character overall, especially when it comes to movies. But this version of the Rhino is just ass. It's trash. It's basura, spazzatura. They gotta throw it in the trash can, bro. Get it far away from me because it's awful. It's just pitiful. For starters, I'm not sure if you mentioned or heard what I said before, but Rhino is supposed to be, a bad guy. He's supposed to be a thug, a gangster, aggressive. He wants to show the world he means business. This Rhino, in my opinion, doesn't do that. They made that part of his story. They did. They showed him being like a weak-willed little bitch. And then, he becomes the Rhino to show them he means business, But to me, that's not how the Rhino story really worked. Rhino wasn't really like, you don't actually ever see him as a little bitch. Never do. You just see him and he just wants to be stronger and he's just getting the test experiment from the people, the scientists. So for me, this right off rip doesn't work. It just makes him look like a total loser and a twerp. Especially when you actually watch the movie, they go in on him. He's getting fried, he's getting roasted, everybody thinks he's a loser, nobody takes him seriously, he's just a complete and utter dork. But they go further. They actually try and make Rhino a shape-shifting skin. Which what? That's not Rhino at all. If you are going to adapt Rhino and you don't want him to be in a mecha suit, you want him to actually be the Rhino we all love from the comics, you shouldn't have him miss out on everything about the Rhino suit that matters to us who liked him in the comics. It doesn't make any sense that you would actually still have an organic Rhino in this movie, but he is not trapped in the suit. It doesn't make any sense. This man walks around with a JanSport backpack on. And this backpack is the backpack that secretes the adrenaline, the whatever. It secretes some drug that stops him from turning into the Rhino. And then when he takes it off, he becomes the Rhino. And the only way he can be a regular person is if he has that backpack on. That completely defeats the purpose of the Rhino. Completely just ruins the purpose of the Rhino. Rhino is not a character that can feel bad about sometimes being the Rhino. No, the Rhino's point is he's always the Rhino. He's stuck in this hide. He's stuck as a giant Rhino. So for overall, I don't understand how you completely bypass that but still try and say his life sucks because he can't not be the Rhino as long as he has his backpack on. It's so that backpack actually is saving the day. I don't see the issue here. There are many people in this real world that we all live in, the real world, not no comic book world, that also need to walk around with something on them every single day, otherwise they will die. That's not new or foreign, nor is it the most tragic thing that's ever happened to anybody ever. Rhino being stuck in a Rhino costume for the rest of his life, that's pretty freaking tragic. Rhino having to wear a backpack to not become the Rhino, that's just modern medicine trying to help out. So for me, it just seems like a complete bastardization of the entire character. And then you look at the organic design they have for the Rhino when he's finally shown off on screen. Holy shit, he looks terrible. Holy shit, he looks awful. So I personally can't see how Rhino would be anywhere else but the top of this list because he just is atrocious in every single facet in the Kraven movie. Every single facet. Well, that's pretty much it for me in this video. I had an enjoyment making this video. I think it's fun ranting and raving about stuff, getting loud and passionate about things. So yeah, I enjoyed doing this. If you guys enjoyed the video, you should like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought down below. I have a Discord, so I'll put that in the description too. If you want to talk to me more, you guys can see me on Discord and talk to me there. But that's pretty much it for me in this video. It's tragic that Rhino managed to be 3rd and 1st place, but hey, what are you going to do? Dunk out. Peace!